everybody and welcome to the Flute Practice. Today I'm going to be answering one of your guys' questions, and that is somebody asked me, how do I know where to breathe? So today I'm going to give you guys some kind of general pointers on figuring out where to mark your breaths and how to know what is a good place to breathe. Alright, the first quite obvious point is, of course, we breathe between phrases. And the question that follows from this is, well, how do I know what a phrase is and where the phrases are? And this can be really challenging. The best way that I like to figure out where the phrases are is to actually sing the melody. So if I know a piece well enough in the meantime, start to actually sing it and listen to where you naturally phrase it and where you naturally breathe when you sing. So for example, a really classic example I love to use is just singing something like Happy Birthday. So if I sing Happy Birthday to you, and then I would breathe there. I reflexively, instinctively breathe. So sing your phrases and see where naturally it feels good to breathe. That would be my first kind of instinctive tip. If you're really struggling with this though, there are a few other little tips that may help you be able to figure out exactly where to breathe. So the first really nice little tip is to breathe after long notes. Not always, but generally breathing right after long notes usually kind of is the end of a phrase, or it's just a really great place to kind of sneak in a breath that goes quite unnoticed. So I'm going to play just a little kind of phrase, which I'm going to show you on the screen, of Gauber's Madrigal. And this shows this kind of point very nicely. When I say long notes, often, it's even tied over notes. Often tied notes are great places to breathe, but also long notes in comparison to the rest of the piece and, the rest of the passages. So in this case, we've got a crotchet, or a tied over crotchet, which isn't very long, but in comparison to the semiquavers, it is a longer spot. So we've got this kind of a thing. And then breathe. And so on and so forth. So there you can see that tied over longer note, great spot to breathe. The next really useful little tip for this is if your piece starts on an upbeat, or if the phrase starts on an upbeat, usually you want to breathe before the upbeat every single time. So not always, but very often phrases follow the same kinds of shapes. So where the phrase begins in terms of the upbeat or the downbeat, that often gives you a clue as to where the phrases in future are going to begin, and you're going to breathe just before the new phrase. So I'm going to use this nice little Gaubert Madrigal once again, and I'm going to show you this exact principle. We have now got the whole piece is starting on an upbeat. So we've got now I'm going to breathe on the upbeat again. So there you can see I had the first little phrase, I could breathe nicely on the upbeat and do the second phrase. It kind of, in this case, kind of belong to the same phrase almost, but you can separate them into two parts very nicely. Now, you will see in this phrase that there is a slur where I breathed. And this brings me to my next point, which is very often as flute players, we have to ignore the written slurs. Composers don't really always understand what it means to breathe, or that we even have to breathe, and they very often just don't get it right. So you're going to have to ignore largely the slurs. Don't try and follow the slurs of the composer and only breathe then. Usually the most unmusical, unrealistic places to breathe. And often I think the slurs are more kind of phrasing markings than they are directly you shouldn't tongue there, or they don't want you to tongue there. That being said, don't not tongue because you're trying to obey the slur and breathe. Tongue every single time you breathe and you restart a note, you always tongue the note. So let's just go over this little passage again and I'll let you hear what it sounds like. So there you can see very clearly articulated and tongue those notes. No funny business. A couple of places that really you don't want to breathe. The one place is right before the final note of a piece. I know it is so tempting to breathe on that last pianissimo high G that you have, but most of the time I'd say please don't do it. Really, it's like having a sentence and then not fully finishing it straight away. You know, could be cool for a dramatic effect, but most of the time just a bit annoying. You also want to really consider, are my breaths like very noticeable, or are they breaking up the musical flow of the piece? And a lovely way to check this out is to actually record yourself, listen back and listen. Are there breaths that are really breaking up the natural flow of the music? Is this how I'd want to hear it or sing it? Okay, everybody, I'm going to be doing a kind of full video on how to practice and approach this specific piece, the Gobe Madrigal, and there will be lots more in there about breathing and kind of working through different kinds of breaths and a lot of other stuff. So I encourage you guys, go check that out on my Patreon page. It is available to patrons only, so you will have to become a patron, which I really encourage you guys to do. It's like something you can join for as little as $1 a month. Or you can go check out some of the other rewards. There are some really, really nice rewards to take your flute playing to the next level. So go check it out. Until then, everybody, happy practicing and see you next time.